All right, good morning. Welcome to Tool Time Tuesday. We're on session 70, if you can believe that. And we're going to talk about chatting with Zooms and Teams. Now, this may seem kind of basic because you've all been chatting this whole time in meetings, but I really wanted to talk about it as a tool for sort of connecting outside of meetings as well and reducing our email through chat and just creating another way to engage with one another that hopefully isn't fatiguing. I need to share my screen. All right. Can you see it okay, Leslie?
I can.
Okay, perfect. I figured you would
Also, do you
tell
want to
me.
do an announcement about sound?
Oh, about sound. If my sound isn't good or Leslie's sound isn't good, please chat us in the box. We have had some issues, so we want you to be honest and be open if the sound's not good, so we can correct it. Thank you. All right, I'm Larissa, and my co-host is Leslie, and we're from the Research Medical Library. You can find us at mdanderson.org/library. As always, please reach out and ask questions if you have questions. We're here to help. It's April. Leslie wanted to remind us that our taxes are due. So check your local public library. They often have tax services to help you prepare if you need some assistance. And of course, there's apps and different tools in offices, but just don't forget that they're due this month. We have some upcoming classes in the library, so I wanted to mention we have EndNote getting started, PubMed getting started, and finding systematic reviews and meta-analyses. The next tool time, my colleague Erwin Metter is going to talk about EndNote for beginners. So even if you've used EndNote, it might be good to have a refresher. If you haven't heard, EndNote 20 has come out, and that is going to change things as well. So let's talk about Teams chat first. I don't use Teams as much as I use Zoom. So this was a fun exploration and I think very useful and hopefully useful to you as well. So in Teams chat, you can chat during a meeting, but you can also chat outside of meetings in a group or just one-on-one with someone. So if you look at the little screenshot here, the first chat option you have is yourself. This is where you could play around and practice. You could also just add drafts of files you want to share with yourself. That's chat is just between you and you, very meta there. There are other chats you can see here. I've blurred out names for privacy, but just to note the icons here, anything that's a purple icon is from a meeting. So this is a chat that happened from a meeting that I was in, and I can go back and look at the chat later. So purple icons are meetings. If you see profile photos, those are chats that are with one or more people. So something you may have created or someone else created, so you can chat with several people. The gray bell icon indicates that you've muted a chat. So that means you don't want to get notifications from it. Maybe it's too much, or you just want to check it when you have time to check it. You can mute a chat in Teams, and you can also unmute it at any time if you'd like. There are some basic options when you're chatting. If you click on the ... next to any chat, you'll see that you can pin a chat at the top of your list. So if it's one you're using regularly with a group or a colleague, you could pin that to the top. Again, you can mute chats to turn off notifications. You can hide a chat from the list. So if it's not useful to you, you can hide it. You can also unhide it later, and I'm going to send the slides with the link to how to hide and unhide as well. You can leave a chat. So if it's not useful to you and you don't want to be in it, you can leave the chat. Just note that to rejoin, you're going to have to be re-invited by someone in the chat. And you can also delete a chat. So if it's no longer active and you don't want it in your list, you can delete that chat. And again, I have left instructions here. Please speak up if you think of something else in Teams that you found useful. To start an individual chat, you just click on the little square with the pencil icon in your chat app. You do have to have the chat selected on the left-hand side here, but then you can start a new chat. You can enter a name, you can enter an email of a person, you can also enter a group or a tag. So what are groups and tags? We did have to practice this. Groups can be created under contacts. So you could have a group, maybe you have a team that you work with and it's 5 or 6 people. You can make a group in your contacts section. So you have a group that you can chat with quickly. You can also create tags within a team. It's very similar to groups. You can add specific people to that tagged group so that when you go to chat, you can just enter in the tag and they'll pop up and you can chat with them. Now, there is no way to batch import them that I could find. So you're not going to be chatting with 300 people, but in that case, you would just use Teams, the actual channels of Teams to communicate with that group. These are for smaller groups of people. And then you can just start chatting once you've created that. When you chat within the meeting in Teams, so some of you are using Teams very actively and some are not as much, but once the Teams meeting is started, the chat's enabled and you can start chatting. Whomever was invited to the meeting is included in the chat and it's going to show up afterwards. I do find that helpful because maybe you didn't get to go to the meeting or maybe you didn't, you had to skip out early. You can still see any files that were shared or chats that happened in the meeting. The other thing that's helpful is if they did record the meeting, the recording will show up in the chat later, which I think is very, very helpful. This only works for internal attendees, and we are going to talk about external ones in a minute. Again, you can delete, mute, or leave the chat, or you can join in. So again, if I wasn't able to attend, it's nice that I can see what happened. The meeting can be restarted from the chat at any time, and the chat will just continue. So it's kind of like an informal way of taking notes. It depends on how good the chat went, how clear the chat was. You can chat with external collaborators. So Leslie and I have tested this. Leslie has tested this quite a bit. Chatting with external collaborators is a little tricky with Teams, but we did find a couple ways to do it. So if you start a chat without a meeting, like you're just trying to start a chat with somebody at UTMB, the outside collaborators are going to have to log in to MD Anderson's team and use MD Anderson's Duo authentication to get in. It's a multi-step process. I could send you steps for this. It's kind of messy with collaborators of Teams, especially if they're not tech savvy. But even though I think Leslie and I are Leslie's very tech savvy, it was difficult to do. There's an easier way to do this to add an external collaborator that we found. Create a meeting. So if you're going to invite them to a meeting, create a meeting in Teams, add your invitees, including the external collaborators, start the meeting. As long as you use that chat at least once, the meeting has been started and the chat's going to be available to those internal and external people outside later. They don't have to use Duo in that way. So you can invite an external collaborator to a Teams meeting. They can chat and then they can continue the chat later and see it in their own teams. Please let us know if you have questions. That was just one way that Leslie's found that was a good workaround, and we did test it again, and it does work very well. And Anna may have other ideas about that. I'm not sure if she's here, but she may have other ideas about how to add external collaborators. We just found that to be the easiest way. You can set up notifications in Teams. So we hear a lot, people are like, I don't get my notifications in Teams. It is a little clunky or tricky maybe, but if you go to the ... next to your profile photo in Teams, you can go to settings and notifications. You can select when you get notifications. You can choose to get them in the banner and the feed. And I think the other option is just the banner. If you exit Teams, your notifications are not going to pop up. This is helpful if you're presenting. Don't just exit out of Teams. Like when I say that, don't just click the X to get out of Teams, but actually close out Teams to make sure that you're not getting things popping up when you're presenting or in another meeting that might be distracting. The other way that I see notifications is if I open Teams, anything that's bolded in the chat section means that something new happened and I need to check it out. So bolded chats means on the left-hand side means that I need to check out what happened. Something happened there. Another way to get notifications, if you want to get all the notifications, is you can set up an email for missed activity. So I also have this where I set it up in my settings, same place that we showed previously. You can go to notifications and you can ask for missed activity emails. I have mine set as soon as possible. You don't have to do that. You could do it just, I don't remember if it says once a day, I think is an option.
It does.
Okay, so if you kind of don't want to have your Teams open all the time, maybe it's just distracting or pulling on your system or whatever the reason is, you can receive these activity emails to see what happened when you weren't in Teams. There are options for appearance and sound where you can change the notification style, and I found this helped me as well, though it can be fatiguing to get too many notifications, so keep that in mind. You can have a little window pop up when you get a notification in Teams, anything happens, and it'll pop up in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. You can also choose the Teams built-in pop-up, which is what's pictured here. It pops up in the Teams app. I have the Windows one turned on, so it will actually pop up in the bottom right-hand corner. If Teams is closed, I don't see that. So like I have it open now because I might show it to you guys, but normally I would have it closed during a meeting. You can have it show a message preview, and you can have it play a sound for incoming calls and notifications. Keep in mind that, again, notifications can be fatiguing. It's okay to turn them off and just have the missed activity email. You are not required to answer everything instantaneously. And if somebody really needed you desperately, I'm going to imagine they'll call you or they'll shoot you an email. So hopefully call you if they really needed you desperately. So these are the options for notifications. That's Teams chat in a nutshell. I really wanted to demo the Zoom chat because I don't think people are using it fully effectively. Some of you may be, and if you have tips, please feel free to join in. But we've started using this a bit more actively, and I wanted to show you how it could be useful. So Zoom chat has the meeting version, which we have here and you're used to using a lot. And they also have something called Team Chat, not to be confused with Teams chat. So sorry about that it's confusing. It's Zoom Team Chat. So the meeting chats, just as a reminder, if you want to get a digest of what happened in the meeting chat, the host is the only one who gets the digest, like the full transcript of what happened in the chat, unless the host enables downloading of the chat for the attendees. Then in that case, someone could download the chat at the end of the meeting and save it for later. So it's not as neat as Teams in terms of cataloging your chats for you from meetings. The team chat, if you want to try this out or if you haven't already, this takes place in the actual Zoom app on your desktop. Some of you may not have the Zoom app, or some of you may not have an up-to-date Zoom app. Check the Software Center and download the most up-to-date Zoom app so that you can try this out. Also, because there's a lot of other great features in the Zoom app. So this is a screenshot of half of the Zoom app here. This is the team chat. So you'll notice there's an icon for team chat. And this is kind of what I wanted to demo from this. Similar to Teams, you start a new chat by clicking on the little square with the pencil icon. It's very tiny, and sometimes I forget that it's there. You can also use Control-N on your keyboard as a quick shortcut. You can add an individual to a chat, so just one person, or you can add a couple people. You can also add external collaborators to a chat. All they have to have is a Zoom account. So if they're from, again, like UT Dentistry, you need to have their UTH email address, and then you can add them to the chat. And then you can just start chatting like you would normally. The little icons on the left of your chats, and these are my coworkers here, the little icons do mean something. The lock means that it's a private channel, and we're going to talk about channels on the next slide. This means it's private. Only the people invited can see this. The pound sign means it's a public channel. This is going to be very rare that you see this. The dot is what you're normally looking for. So dots are for individual people. A green one means they're available. Gray means they're offline. Red means they're unavailable, probably in a meeting. And a green square means they're on their phone. Sorry, somebody started using the annotate. Let me see if I can remember how to clear it. Yeah. Okay. All right. So the dots do have meanings. And you'll get used to those. If you see the people icon, that means there's more than one person in your chat. So you probably added at least 2 people to your chat. and you'll see a little people icon on the left-hand side. So one of the cool things about Zoom chat, besides just being able to chat similarly to how you're doing in Teams or Skype, is that you can create a channel, a Zoom channel for a chat. The channels are for specific teams or topics and can be made public or private. 99.9% of the time, they're going to be private. Public means it's public to the institution. So if you opened your Zoom app now, you'll notice that I created a Tool Time Tuesday. You can search for a Tool Time Tuesday channel, and that is public. But typically, you would not make these channels public. So the channel, to create that, you just go up to the top of your app and you'll click on the drop-down menu and you can create a channel. Name your channel, whatever you want to name it. You can choose the public or private. Again, I would lean towards private. And then you can look at some of the advanced permissions. Advanced permissions allow you to choose who should be able to add members, who's allowed to send messages, and you can choose to allow external members here. So if it's a channel and it's private, you can say, I do want to add external users, and that way you could invite someone else from another institution if it was appropriate. So one of the ways we've used this chat at work is that we have a service desk. So we take turns working on the service desk. And when someone gets stuck on a question or maybe has a weird question come through, they can put it in the chat and we could talk about maybe a solution, or maybe they're asking for backup. They can put it in the chat and say, I need a little backup. And we try to help each other there. This is pretty new that we've been doing this, so I'm not going to say we have it down perfect, but I have found it to be really, really useful. Since we can't just walk over to each other's areas at work anymore, this is a way to stay connected. So again, I know this is important. Chatting with external collaborators is very easy with Zoom. You can just go to your contacts. You can select invite a Zoom contact and add an external user. They do have to accept the invite, but this adds them to your contact list so they can use Zoom. This is one option, but there's more than one option for adding external collaborators. Again, all you have to do is if you're doing just a regular chat, you just add their email, and as long as they have a Zoom account, they can chat. There's no duo, there's no weirdness. It does give you notifications. So we tested this with a colleague. When we shared with her, when we added her, it did let us know that she was external when she started chatting with us, which was a little weird. It identified her as external, but just to let you know that someone outside your organization is chatting with you. If you're going to add them to a channel, you do have to take that extra step of going to your advanced permissions and saying that you want to add those external collaborators. They're going to get an email and then they can start chatting with you. If you want to chat with Zoom in general, you're going to use the app. So the app on your desktop, when you search your search bar for Zoom, that's what you're going to use to chat. There is no web-based chat for Zoom. You can use your phone as well. The phone app works well. I tried it. I chatted with myself. You can also, if you have a Chromebook, they do have a web-based option in Chrome, but only for Chromebooks. So the app is the tool that you're going to use to chat. Probably should have made that a separate slide. Your basic chat controls for team chats are very similar to Teams, but this is Zoom, team chats in Zoom. You can start a meeting. So if you need to talk to someone and you click start a meeting, they're notified that you're calling them and that you want to meet with them. You can mark a chat as read or unread. You can have it notify you when that person's available. So you really need to talk to them. It'll notify you when they're online again. You can view their profile. You can open it in a new window. One of the other things I think is really helpful is you can star a chat. So it'll go to the top of your Zoom app. So something that you're using frequently, you could star so you can find it really quickly. You can also unstar it. So if it becomes less frequent that you're chatting, you could unstar it and it'll move back into the regular list. If you get a lot of chats going, you can also create folders in Zoom. So you could have different folders for different topics and put chats into the folders. I don't have that many chats going on, and I think it would be overwhelming if I did, but clearly this was something that was needed because Zoom added it recently. So you can move chats into folders to organize them. You can also block a contact. and you can clear the chat history. The only thing about clearing the chat history is it clears for you. It doesn't clear for anyone else, even if you're the owner. So as Leslie and I always say, there's no such thing as privacy. So maybe we don't say it exactly that way, but there really isn't anything, nothing is private. So be careful what you're chatting, be professional when you're chatting. I know you already know that, but clearing it only clears for you. So it's still there for the other person you spoke to. Anybody have questions? I'm like talking at you. So we can chat in Skype, Teams, and Zoom. Are there tips, best practices for which we should pick for particular situations? I'm afraid that I'll be missing chats. It's a great question. Skype is going to go away. So you can use Skype if that's what you're comfortable with and then that's what your team is comfortable with. It will move to Teams eventually. It will go away. I don't have a timeline on that, but we do know that other UT schools have already dropped Skype and they've moved to Teams. So it's really about flexibility of what works for you. So I think the phones will go through Teams eventually. I do not have confirmation on that, but that's what we've heard from other UT institutions. Yes, you can disable the chat pop-up too. So we'll talk about that. And let's talk a little bit more about which one to use which in a little bit. So I lost my place. Oh, chat controls for Zoom channels. Just a couple extra controls that you have if you're in a channel. You can copy the link to the channel and share it with people so they could join in. You can manage individual channel notifications from the ... next to the channel. So say that you don't want to you want to mute it or something, you can change your notifications here. You can mute the channel, edit the channel, assign a new owner, leave or delete them, the basic things you can do. For a channel, the owner has control to change permissions. They have a little bit more control. So those permissions that I set for the Tool Time Tuesday channel might block you from doing certain things, but not by too much, just so I can control it a little bit. So yeah, if you are going to chat in Zoom and you want to have a private chat, you're going to want to have another chat channel for that and not use the public channel. So yes.
And remember, as always, private does not necessarily mean completely private. Just we keep reminding people.
Yeah, so like if we're in a meeting now, if you private chatted someone, I can't see it as the host. But if you're using the chat app and you're chatting in a channel or a group, everyone's going to see it. But if you could just take it to a sidebar and have a separate chat that's just you and your colleague if you need to ask them a question or something that's off topic. I can show it to you in just a minute. A couple of other Zoom chat options that are helpful is on the left-hand navigation. They give you an option to click here to see if anyone's mentioned you. So that's if someone @s you, says @Larissa, to ask you a question, you can see that. You can see missed calls. There's contact requests. And the contact requests are for external collaborators. Typically, they go into here when they've requested you, but you also get an email. One of the cool things in Zoom that I like is if you have a lot of chats going, you can bookmark a chat message so you can go back to it later. So if somebody gave you a really good piece of information, I mean, you could of course put it in your notebook. There's lots of ways you could save it, but you could bookmark it. So then you could click on these bookmarks and jump back to that message later. So I found that to be useful. If you bookmarked too many things though, it could get overwhelming. You can set a reminder for a specific chat. So if there's an action you need to take and you can't do it now, you could remind yourself later. And you can click on files to see which files have been shared. So they've got some functionality here that I kind of like, especially the bookmarks, seeing the files and then the reminders as well. For the notifications, you can click on your profile photo, go to settings, team chat, notifications, and this is very similar to Teams. Say when you want to get the notifications, all messages, just direct messages, you can choose those settings and you may have to play around with them. For sound and behavior, if you want it to play a sound, you can again go into that notifications section and say play a sound. That may be too much or too fatiguing. You can turn that off. It's up to you. You can show a message preview when the pop-up pops up. You can also select do not disturb from a time period. There's another way to choose do not disturb too that I'm going to show you, but to say, I don't want anyone to bother me, from 5 p.m. to 9 a.m. is what they have here, but whatever you decide on. You can mute your chat notifications while you're in a meeting. So if you're in a Zoom, they just won't pop up here. You could open chats in a new window, and you could show a notification banner on the screen until it's dismissed. I didn't finish that sentence. You can check that. So if you're missing notifications, you could check this box and say, I want to see the banner until I click on it and respond. That may be really annoying as well. But you can mute the chat notifications while you're in a meeting or a call. You can also shut the app down as well, so it's not running. There's also an option for keywords and contact notifications. This is kind of interesting, but you can choose specific keywords if those are used in the chat that you're notified. We did try this. Not sure what the exact purpose would be, but maybe if there's something that a project you're working on and there's a keyword you want to make sure you're notified, you could choose that. And you could choose to be notified when a specific person posts something. So like if I want to know when my boss mentions something, it will notify me specifically that she mentioned something. You can also click on the search box in Zoom to search. It's clunky just like in Teams, and I should have shown it in Teams, but it's very similar in Teams. Do your search and then use your filters. So search for the keyword you're looking for, and then you can filter to top results, to contacts, to channels, to messages, to files. You could also search in a specific channel or a date or a time. So search first and then use your filters. Okay, so someone had asked the question about muting it. The other thing you can do, and let me make sure, hopefully you can see this. If I can get it to move. Okay, so in my Zoom app here, if I want to not be disturbed, I can go to my little avatar and I can say, do not disturb, and set a time frame. So I did that now, so I don't get any pop-ups. That is another way to mute it, to say, leave me alone. Don't disturb me for a while. So that's the best way I've found to block the pop-ups if you know you're in an important meeting. You should be able to shut Zoom down as well, and that should block them as well. Okay, so let's see. Did I miss any questions? Yeah, we're going to share this after times. After the session, after times, and we'll share the recordings. Okay, so notifications. So just to get to your notifications in the Teams one, you go to your little avatar and you always look for settings, kind of like on your phone. Always look for settings. It popped up on the other window. And then you've got team chat, and that's where you're going to be able to select your notifications down here. You got to scroll a little to make some decisions here on your notifications. Good question. Okay, so let's talk about some best practices in etiquette. I know that you know this, but I think it's worth saying again anyway, because I do see these behaviors in meetings sometimes. Keep it professional. I remember chats, and even private chats, are most likely viewable by administrators. So watch what you say. Respect others' work hours and PTO days. So we all forget sometimes, but try not to chat late at night, or if you know they're, vacationing somewhere, just hold it until they get back. Think about if it's the right time to chat. Back channel chats, back channel means like a side chat while you're in a meeting. Those should move to an individual chat, not in the text of the chat during the meeting. So just like we were talking about before, if you're in a meeting and you want to have a side conversation, you need to maybe move it to the Zoom app or somewhere else, so it's not clogging up the chat box. If someone's presenting, consider waiting for a Q&A period or the Q&A panel, or using the Q&A panel. I'm okay with us talking here because that's what I really want it to be, as a conversation, but if somebody's doing a big presentation, sometimes the chat could be distracting for them. So listen to what they say in the beginning. If they want to hear you throughout, that's cool. If not, maybe wait for a pause to ask a question, because your question could get lost in the chat. Try to turn off your chat pop-ups during a meeting. You can shut down Teams completely if you're not using it. You can also mute notifications in Teams. In Zoom, you can do that do not disturb or shut down the Teams app if you're not using it. The Zoom app if you're not using it. A couple other reminders. They have this option now to use the reply to option instead of starting a new chat. And it's hard to remember to do this sometimes, but to keep the chats together so we know what the flow is, try to use the reply to option underneath the chat that you're talking to. Use emojis to reply to or express something quickly. This can signal that you don't need a response, but you just want to say thumbs up or I love this. It's great. Sorry. You can also quote a chat. So you can refer back to a previous chat or conversation and continue the conversation there. So quoting a chat can help people refer back and understand where you're at. I think we've all gotten lost in chats before because it's coming at you so quick. So try to use the tools like reply to and the quote to keep the chat going. There's also a new feature in Zoom called Translate. So you can update your Zoom app to get the latest features. Don't forget that. The translate option, I don't know how well it works. I tried it very briefly, but it's supposed to translate the language for you so you understand what was being said. This is not a foolproof tool, right? But maybe if there's a word you missed or something like that. Okay. Does anyone have questions? I went a little bit over. I love that there's a fox avatar here. That's awesome. Okay. Okay, there's an MS Teams question. Does everyone have a record button? I do not believe everyone has a record button. I think you may have to ask for permission to get a record button. And there is, if you go to Inside and you search for virtual meetings, I think you can request recording permissions. They don't want people to record every meeting. I think it's actually against the UT system policies. So they make you go through and let them know why you don't have to do it every time, but why are you using the record button and make sure that it's appropriate that you're using it. Any other questions or any other suggestions for using these chat tools? We were going to talk about kind of which one's the best one to use. I think if you already have a team going and people are interacting in the team, I think that it makes sense to go ahead and continue that conversation in the team. If you use Teams a lot, I think using the chat in Teams makes sense. We were having trouble with people not keeping their Teams open, so they weren't getting notified of the activity in Teams. So we've moved to the Zoom chat for some specific chatting. People felt like the notifications were better and they started communicating a little bit more. It's really a team decision or a decision from the leader to say, we're going to use this tool for this project.
I think the other part of that is if you realize or if you've noticed that Microsoft Teams is very laggy or is causing a lot of lag for your other apps, this is where Zoom might be a better option because it runs a little faster, smoother, with a little less lag.
And you can use Teams on your browser as well. So if Teams is where everybody's at, you can use it on the browser. And we do use it for specific things. And certain people chat me in Teams and certain people chat me in Zoom. So that can get confusing. It is a good idea to kind of know where you're at. But also don't feel like you are tied to chat all the time, just like your email. Choose times when you're going to check it. Don't feel like you have to answer everything instantly.
This is a very good question that just showed up.
Okay, so if you're in a team chat, but need to be in a Zoom meeting, can you have both open, one for chat and one for meeting? And will the Zoom show me available if I'm in a chat? Okay, if you're in a team chat, you can still be in a Zoom meeting. So I have chatted in the Zoom app or Teams during other meetings. It may show that you're not available. It may show that you're busy. It's not going to say you're unavailable. It's just going to say you're busy, I think. Thoughts on that, Leslie?
I think that's right. That if you end up in a meeting, then you're going to get the busy. And if you're presenting, you might get the do not disturb like the actual
Busy.
red dot with a line through it that says do not disturb if you're
And
presenting.
I believe your teams should be connected to your Outlook to show when you're busy and when you're free.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another thing too. Okay, so one person has both open and has Teams set as do not disturb. My Zoom has a little video camera indicating that I'm in a Zoom meeting. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
which is
Mine does
nice.
the same thing.
I actually noticed that the other day because I was going to chat our department administrator, and then I saw she had the red camera, and I was like, "No, she's busy," because hers is red all the time. She's always busy, but the camera let me know she's in a meeting. I really need to leave her alone. And that might be then it's a situation where I'm going to send her an email instead or something because I don't know when she'll be available again. Okay, if you make yourself available on the Zoom Teams chat, will that transfer to someone seeking you for a new Zoom meeting? Show you as available. They're still going to read your Outlook calendar for meetings to see when you're available. They're going to read your Outlook calendar, not your Zoom, probably. Okay, is the show captions function available to everyone? For Zoom, you mean?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes, it should be available to everyone now. It should be default now.